At a time when our world faces the threat of war, extremism, climate change, and increasingly a disregard for human rights, an international group of distinguished leaders gathered for the Conference of Hope to discuss the theme Universal Human Rights and Religious Freedom. The conference was held in Seoul, South Korea on November 12th.
기본권인 인권 가운데 가장 기본적이며 가장 기초적인 종교의 인권을 중심으로 보편적 인권에 기반한 종교의 자유라는 주제로 본 컨퍼런스를 개최하게 되었습니다.
Several speakers delivered messages during the conference, streamed live globally and sponsored by the Washington Times Foundation and Think Tank 2022.
Religious liberty long has been called the first freedom. This essential liberty is under attack around the world. Religious liberty is like the famed canary in the mine, the violation of which warns us of impending danger elsewhere. Governments which refuse to protect us as we seek God or otherwise address the transcendent are unlikely to protect us as we exercise our conscience in other ways.
Conference speakers explained that a basic difference between open societies and closed or authoritarian societies is respect for human rights, and especially religious freedom. Unfortunately, religions around the world are reporting persecution, intolerance, discrimination, and violence. People of faith and their allies must speak up.
We want to promote peace and security globally, especially in Korea and the Pacific Rim. The highlight of the conference today will be the introduction and adoption of the Declaration on the Universal Value of Religious Freedom.
The conference declaration on human rights and religious freedom is a global call to action, a call for all people to stand firmly against all forms of intolerance, prejudice, harassment, and hate toward believers of the world's religions, reads the statement.
Religious freedom is a hallmark of an open society and a democracy. The United States, Japan, South Korea, key democracies that must stand for religious freedom for everybody, everywhere, all the time.
Keynote speakers pointed to the ongoing persecution of religious groups including Muslim Uyghurs, Tibetan Buddhists, Christians, Jewish, Muslims, Baha'is, Jehovah's Witnesses, Yazidis, Falun Gong, and more recently, members of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, formerly the Unification Church in Japan.
Certain Japanese media and lawyers are motivated by different factors. They are also trying to spread in Japan the international secular humanist ideology by accusing any religious movement that is visible and successful to convert members and obtain donations through brainwashing. That's the usual secular humanist ideology.
It is my heartfelt and deep conviction that every human should have the most basic right of religious liberty. One fundamental principle and truth is that our rights do not come from government. They come from God.
The current persecution of the Family Federation in Japan was addressed by several of the speakers, noting that attacks on the religion had intensified since the tragic assassination of the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in July. As a result, members of the Family Federation have reported death threats, harassment, false accusations, and verbal abuse.
最も悪質な人権侵害は、拉致監禁を手段とする脱会強要でした。1966年に始まり、2015年にほぼ収束するまでに4300名以上が犠牲になりました。
Through our research, we are seeing that many in the media are trying to dissolve the movement in Japan without any legal due process. We've also found that many are politically sympathetic to the communist or socialist, anti-religious, anti-America, and anti-Abe view.
As a journalist, I have an eye for following the trajectory of a story, and this one is very strange. A charismatic former prime minister charting a future course for Japan is murdered by a disgruntled man with a homemade gun. The debate, though, does not focus on, say, mental health challenges in Japanese society, as it does on gun control in America after a mass shooting there. The story is now firmly embedded on the Unification Church and a decades-old festering grievance that the killer's mother made donations that she could not afford.
After World War II, the Soviet Union was aggressively working to bring Japan into the communist sphere of influence. The erosion of religious freedom inevitably leads to the suppression of freedom of speech, open debate, and free elections, thus breeding fear and distrust. Persecution of minority religions often gives rise to violence and even genocide. A group called Open Doors lists 50 of the top persecutors of Christians and other faiths, starting with Afghanistan's Taliban and North Korea's totalitarian regime. The Center for Study on Global Christianity reports 100,000 Christians are killed annually for their faith, averaging one death every 6 minutes.
Freedom of religion or belief is a litmus test of all other human rights, because when the religious freedom is missing, then other civil freedoms are missing as well. Why is evil so influential in today's world? Because it has many allies. It's indifference, ignorance, and fear. When we don't care, when we don't know, and when we are scared to say or to do something. In order to overcome these siblings, we must invest more into active engagement, lifelong education, and civil courage. Then, century of hope may come and culture of human dignity may prevail over extreme violence, aggressive wars, and century of genocides.
Conference of Hope speakers said people of faith, democratic governments, political leaders, and civil society organizations must cooperate to combat the global attacks on religion.
People and societies which dismiss the importance of spiritual values and moral guidelines are susceptible to lose their humanity.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is an example of how a religion can overcome heavy persecution. Despite severe attacks on its people, the Mormon Church now thrives as a major Christian denomination with members widely accepted around the world.
The lesson drawn from persecution is not the need for revenge, but an intensified appreciation of the practical importance and freedom of religion. Part of what one learns from awareness of persecution in one's own tradition is empathy for the suffering of others.
A forthcoming campaign will appeal to the global public to stand in solidarity with believers around the world in support of basic human rights and especially religious liberty. The Washington Times Foundation hosts numerous programs that address the issues of peace and security in the world. Think Tank 2022 regularly engages its worldwide network to promote dialogue, reconciliation, and peace on the Korean Peninsula. To learn more about the Conference of Hope and stand with its declaration on the universal value of religious freedom, please go to this website and sign your support.